As I mentioned briefly in opening this evening, from Thursday through Sunday of last week, I accompanied 27 of our 10th grade class to New York City. The goal was to see and experience the city through a Jewish lens, beginning at Ellis Island, heading to the Tenement Museum, and worshiping at two of Reform Judaism's iconic synagogues, Central and Emmanuel. We tried to instill in the class the hardships and the opportunities, the failures and the successes our Jewish ancestors encountered upon their immigration to and assimilation within America. Of course, mixed within the learning was fun, such as seeing a Broadway show, tasting the flavors at Dillion's Candy Shop, and experiencing the liveliness of Times Square. Now, the weather this weekend was ideal for the East Coast, especially for the end of October. The midday temperatures were in the 60s, and during the day, the sun blessed us with its presence without a cloud in the sky. Now, in comparison, last year at this time, we were dealing with a massive snow and ice storm, the only snow the East Coast received the entirety of last winter. Yet, as many know, what hit the Upper East Coast and inland following our departure on Sunday was most certainly not typical for fall or the area. Now, Hurricane Sandy was an enormous storm. The girth of it was 1,100 miles from end to end, which equals the driving distance from Memphis to Atlanta and back twice. According to the Wall Street Journal, the storm claimed at least 43 lives, left more than 8 million people without electricity, reduced portions of Atlantic City's boardwalk to splinters, flooded the New York subway system, and damaged each of the airports JFK, Newark Liberty, and LaGuardia. The economic impact of Sandy could total between $50 and $70 billion. Now, Hurricane Sandy was merciless in its destruction. Yet in the midst of all this devastation, there lies hope as families, cities, and lives seek to rebuild. Now, this week, we brace ourselves for another storm. Unlike the physical wrath of Sandy, the wave began with chatter, heightened with diatribes, and will culminate on Tuesday with the election of our country's president. The election has been hotly contested, as each side seeks to prove their rights and the opponent's wrongs. Disturbingly, according to studies of political ads running for this year's race, as early as May of this year, 70% of those ads have been negative, meaning they mention an opponent by name. In comparison to the 2008 campaign, the percentage of negative ads was only 9.1% at the same time. 70 and 9.1 in May. Whether a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, this unbelievable percentage increase is symbolic of the polarizing state of affairs that our country faces as Election Day approaches. It is representative of each side's inability and refusal to come together. And it is emblematic of a country torn apart by difference instead of tirelessly working together to find common ground for the good of our country and the good of our people. So as we prepare for the results on Tuesday night, how can we move from partisanship to bipartisanship? How can we eliminate confrontation to find common ground? And how can we instill hope instead of despair? Last week, we read from the Torah portion, Lech Lecha, in which Abraham was called to leave his home, the place that he is comfortable, and then asked to settle in another land where he would be a stranger and unfamiliar with his surroundings. Now, in analyzing this story, one can imagine, especially those who have relocated before, the difficulties with moving from our homes and changing our routines. Yet Abraham, without much fanfare, took his family and headed off with only uncertainty and faith ahead of him. This unknown reality mirrors what we face as a country. Yet one person's election on Tuesday cannot determine our fate as a people. Instead, it's us together who will ultimately shape our country and determine whether we digress or move forward. However, in order to do this, respect rather than contempt, acceptance rather than rejection, guarded trust rather than doubt, and compassion rather than indifference must appear within us. Now, this brings us to our Torah portion this week, which begins with the Hebrew word vayera, meaning, and God appeared. We are reminded that the presence of respect, acceptance, trust, and compassion that can exist between each of us no matter what happens on Tuesday night. Now, regardless of which side of the political coin we stand upon, does it matter who comes out victorious? The move towards bipartisanship, common ground, and hope can only be found when we decide to see and decide to seek the godliness within each other. Now is the time to begin to make this presence of God appear by concentrating on the things we agree on, needing maybe a more stable economy, helping to ensure the creation of more jobs, aiding those who need help to live day by day, removing intolerance of another person or group from within our midst. We no longer need to stand idly by while our representatives decide they cannot work towards consensus. Together, by taking action in the Memphis community, whether by starting on Mitzvah Day this upcoming Sunday or taking the steps to be more involved with our community, following through with things that we as individuals might be strong at, like mentoring entrepreneurs that are seeking to build the economy, guiding those less fortunate through financial planning, or aiding individuals in search of life skills, standing up to indifference and intolerance. By doing this, we can not only make a difference, but we can also ensure that our country can rise above political discourse and inaction. No matter the outcome this Tuesday night, our hopes might or might not be fulfilled. It will only happen, though, when we as individuals and people decide to come together, regardless of our differences, to make a meaningful difference in our communities. So this Tuesday night, or this upcoming Tuesday, my vote for each of you. For only when we vote for each of us can we actually determine the fate and destiny of our country and our community. Shabbat Shalom.